I don't know how people operate in high heat. It's just miserable. Can you guys, if you guys, can you see this? Hold on, let me come to you. 93 degrees. It's October 3rd. Shouldn't it be raining right now? I don't know, but it's miserable. But I'm here, and hello everybody. So one thing I realized, I love talking about vintage clothing and showing you guys vintage hauls and thrifting and all that kind of stuff, but I don't think I've ever actually sat down with you and explained why I love vintage so much and why I think vintage clothing or clothing from the 1930s, 40s, 50s, and 60s is, in my opinion, one of the golden eras of fashion in America. So I figured, why not sit down with you guys and do a little rundown on why I think vintage clothing, at least from that era, always looks the best. And if you see photos from that era and you wonder why it doesn't look that good on you, hopefully some of these reasons can help you with that. Not only that, I did this video on my TikTok and Instagram and it went viral, so I figured I'd expand on it a little more here on YouTube. So like I was saying, if you've ever seen photos of James Dean, Marlon Brando, your grandpa, just photos in general of people who looked very stylish back in the early 40s, 50s, and 60s, there's a reason for it, and that's simply because, in my opinion, I think clothes were just meant to flatter people back then. There was a form and a function, and because of that, it gave off the impression of things just looking amazing because there was a reason that they were being worn that specific way. Does that make sense at all? Hopefully it does. What I mean by that, for example, let's say t-shirts worn by James Dean, Marlon Brando, or even military people back in the 40s and 50s. During that time, typically t-shirts were seen as underwear. They were meant to be worn underneath clothes as a garment that was meant to capture sweat. Maybe it's a layering piece, but it wasn't typically meant to be, especially a white tee, wasn't typically meant to be worn standalone by itself until movie stars Marlon Brando, James Dean, in my opinion, really made that look mainstream because they were celebrities. They were sex icons. That's why typically t-shirts of that time are much more form-fitting, much more close to the body, cut closer on the arms. That way it's something that when you're wearing it as an undershirt, you're not typically seeing it as much. So when it's worn on its own, it's more form-fitting, shows off muscles. It's just overall a more flattering look to those types of people. Now, the list goes on, and I'm about to suffer in the most unimaginable way. I'm putting on wool pants to show you guys an example of what I'm talking about. But another thing, high-waisted trousers back in those days were the norm, and there's another reason for that as well. Mainstream fashion has pretty much dictated that pants are supposed to sit right here, but if you think about it, this area of your body, right kind of below your love handles where there's that hard bone, that's your hip. Those are your hips. So when your pants are sitting at your hips, there's a lot of constricting movement and a lot of fabric right here that gets bunched up. Back in the day when these were the norm, you'd have it at your natural waistline, which is right either at your belly button or below your belly button, kind of above these love handles. And that allows for a lot of mobility. It allows for, maybe you're riding a bike, maybe you're out, doing all this. There's no bunching of this. There's no bunching here. When you sit down, you don't get that pooch because there's no hard line waistline that's kind of doing things that are unimaginable. It's just a nice, comfortable, and easy way to wear your pants. And not only that, it helps with proportions, which again, back then were kind of just natural. Nowadays, you kind of have to work for them. But here is an example of a high-waisted trouser with just a simple fitted white t-shirt, albeit it's a bit wrinkly, and a baseball hat, some loafers, I don't know if you can see them, but you have a very nice put-together outfit that looks great for my body type. And trust me, if anybody in the comments is going to say you can't do this if you're bigger, honestly, it might even be more beneficial when you're bigger. It might be a different way of looking at it, but in my opinion, it's not like there wasn't bigger people back in that era. They still dressed like this, and I still think it looked great. So don't be afraid to try high-waisted trousers, especially because I think it might be one of those missing pieces to a lot of people's wardrobes that they don't necessarily think about, maybe because they don't want to look like it's a costume, or they don't want to look like a grandpa or something like that. But trust me, when you mix and match modern and vintage, throw in your own little personal touches, a baseball hat, some bags, accessories, you can turn your outfits and your style into your own, and that's exactly what it's supposed to be, right? So don't be scared about it. Open your eyes a little bit, and I think you might be pleasantly surprised, because I am a firm believer that high-waisted trousers are a staple in anybody's wardrobe. You just gotta find the right ones. So there's my little spiel on why I think vintage clothing is always the best, and why I'm making modern vintage clothing with Racker Finn. So today I want to come up with a new varsity jacket idea. And you know me, I love jackets, obviously, and I think for my first jacket that I ever released for my brand Racker Finn, this blue one right here, the Lucky You varsity jacket, it was very well received. So I figured, why not make a new varsity jacket and bring you guys along with some of the creative processes that I go through. I'm going to be pulling inspiration from a lot of vintage references. I'm going to be pulling inspiration from traditional tattoo illustrations, and having a general idea, even some movies, but having a general idea of what I want to design and the concept behind it really helps, and then you kind of just mesh everything together. So let's put together a little jacket design ideation brainstorm idea. And just like that, it's very rough, but coming up with something like this, another little varsity jacket, and getting inspiration from all over the place and focusing it in on something that I believe is very important to the brand, it comes up with something kind of cool. So I'll be getting this going and starting a sampling process on it ASAP. So since the majority of this video so far has been talking about clothes or fashion in general, let's continue that theme and just talk about some trends, ones that at least I personally enjoy. So I do think trends are things to experiment with if you really like them, but not every single one just to kind of do it. So if you like something, try it. Who knows, it might turn into a staple. If you don't like it, then it goes away, and at least you said that you tried it. So the first one that I am happy to see on this list is the Ivy League trend. And while personally, in my personal style, it has not been a trend, it is more of a staple in my style, just because I love everything vintage. I love varsity jackets, I love varsity sweaters and knits and all that kind of stuff. I'm glad to see that it's kind of making its way into the mainstream, I guess, a little bit. What I personally love about the Ivy League look is that it has this kind of old school, romantic kind of authenticity to it, which I really love. That's why I wear it a lot in my style throughout the years. But it's also cool when you can mix and match like the modern looks of certain clothes with the vintage, more old school look of clothes to kind of get this mesh and this blend of fun things. The next one that I love is what's called heritage western wear, according to the internet, which essentially what I'm just going to boil that down to is western wear slash cowboy looks, but not something that looks like a costume, something a little bit more in the modern look. That could be a lot of plaids, it could be a lot of leather jackets, it could be a lot of suede jackets, it could be a lot of long trench coats, things that are more in that western type of vibe. Definitely cowboy boots, boot cut pants, and jeans, something that I love as well. I think a great look coming up for fall and winter is going to be like a long plaid trench coat with some boot cut jeans or boot cut trousers with some pointed boots. It could be western boots or cowboy boots, or it could just be a nice pointed boot in general. I think that is an amazing look. Maybe have a nice bag or even a baseball hat, something that gives it, it's a little bit more of a modern take on it, but that is what I would look forward to in terms of a more modern Western style of outfit. I hope you enjoyed that little snippet of some car stuff going on in my life. If you want to see actual full-length car dedicated videos, I'll have a link in the description. I have a whole brand new YouTube channel solely dedicated to car builds, whether it's the Porsche, whether it's the VW. I've got motorcycles, I've got an old American muscle car that I'm working on as well. So if you want to see actual car builds, go down to the description below and check that out. It's just going to be O'Brien and Sons Garage. Otherwise, on here, it's just going to be these little snippets to give you guys just a little glimpse and a little sneak peek into what's going on into the car world for me. But other than that, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I actually have another video coming out next week, so I'll be talking to you next week.